At 60, a man's life is a mirror. What he sees reflected back is not only the story of his choices, but also the unseen chemistry of his brain, the silent dance of dopamine, the molecule of motivation, drive, and pleasure. We often think our struggles come from the outside, age, circumstance, genetics, but what if the real battle is happening inside the brain every single day in small, invisible doses of pleasure that slowly rob us of our strength? Dopamine is not evil. It is the spark of life itself. It fuels your ambition, your curiosity, your passion, your will to build and connect. But in the modern world, dopamine has become hijacked. Technology, instant gratification, comfort, they've rewired the human brain to chase easy highs instead of earned satisfaction. And for men after 60, this hijacking is devastating. It steals vitality quietly, almost politely, one small habit at a time. These are what I call dopamine traps. They don't look dangerous. They look normal, even deserved. That late night scroll, that extra drink, the constant distraction, the compulsive thinking, the need to be comfortable every moment of the day. Each one triggers a microdose of pleasure. Each one lowers your threshold for real joy. And when you repeat them daily, your brain starts to dull. The dopamine baseline drops. You wake up feeling flat, unmotivated, and somehow older than your years. We live in a culture that promises comfort but delivers numbness. The greatest threat to male vitality is not age. It is the quiet surrender to convenience. A man who stops tolerating discomfort stops growing. When dopamine is constantly spiked, it stops working for you. You begin to feel restless, fatigued, even anxious when the stimulation stops. That's the paradox. The more we chase pleasure, the less pleasure we feel. So how do we reverse it? By leaning into what the modern world tells us to avoid. Stillness, discipline, boredom, even pain. When you delay gratification, you restore your brain's natural rhythm. You allow dopamine to flow in balance again every time you resist a small impulse. You strengthen the muscle of self-control. Every time you choose effort over ease, your brain begins to heal. You don't need a miracle supplement or another shortcut. You need a reset, a radical honesty about what you consume, what you chase, and what you avoid. If you feel drained, unfocused, or disconnected after 60, it's not too late. Your brain is still plastic, it can still change, but it requires you to stop medicating your boredom and start facing it. True vitality isn't found in constant pleasure. It's born in the tension between pleasure and pain. The more you earn your dopamine, the stronger you become. Men who learn this truth reclaim not just their energy, but their dignity. They stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. So look at your habits. Identify the quiet traps, the things that give you a quick lift, but leave you emptier over time. Then begin to remove them one by one. As you do, you'll notice something extraordinary. The colors return to your life. Food tastes better. Mornings feel lighter. Your relationships deepen. You begin to feel alive again, not because you're chasing stimulation, but because you've reawakened your capacity for real joy. You are not broken. You are simply overstimulated, and your power, your masculine energy, your focus, your presence, returns the moment you stop feeding the traps that steal it. That's the promise of dopamine balance. That's the path back to vitality after 60. Every act of overindulgence is not pleasure. It's a small withdrawal from your future energy. That's the hidden cost we rarely see when we give in to those instant desires, whether it's food, digital stimulation, or self-gratification. Every spike of easy dopamine feels like a reward in the moment, but in truth, it's a debt. The brain doesn't give us pleasure for free. It demands balance. For every surge of dopamine, there will be a compensatory dip, a moment of emptiness, fatigue, or emotional dullness that follows, and the more we chase those fleeting highs, the deeper the lows become. The brain is designed for rhythm, not excess. Dopamine's natural function is to motivate us toward meaningful goals, to push us to explore, to build, to connect. But when we flood the system repeatedly, it stops being a source of drive and becomes a source of depletion. Imagine a man who, after 60, begins his mornings scrolling through his phone instead of walking outside. Each time he does, his brain learns that effortless stimulation is enough. That habit rewires his motivational circuitry, replacing real effort with artificial reward. Over time, he loses the very spark that once drove him to achieve, to create, to love. His energy doesn't vanish because of age, it erodes through thousands of tiny dopamine withdrawals. This is the quiet epidemic of modern living. We confuse pleasure with nourishment. We think that the more we consume, the more alive we'll feel. But true vitality has never been about abundance. It's about balance. The tragedy is that each small indulgence feels harmless. Another episode, another drink, another glance at the screen, but together they form a slow drain on the system. They create a cycle of craving and fatigue, where every burst of pleasure is followed by a need for more and more until we can't tell the difference between desire and dependence. The problem isn't dopamine itself, it's the context. Dopamine was meant to spike when we hunted, built, learned, or loved. It was the brain's way of saying, yes, this is worth your energy. But now we trigger it artificially, without earning it through effort or meaning. The brain can't distinguish between what's earned and what's empty. So it adapts, it lowers sensitivity, it downregulates receptors. The same activities that once satisfied us no longer do. What was once enough now feels insufficient. This is how vitality slips away, not in a single moment, but through thousands of small choices that teach the brain to settle for less. But the most dangerous part of overindulgence isn't the dopamine crash. It's what it does to your relationship with discomfort. When we constantly chase comfort, we lose our tolerance for pain. And without pain, we lose access to growth. The man who avoids all friction ends up fragile. His motivation weakens, his focus drifts, his resilience fades. Pleasure becomes his only compass, and pleasure by nature is fleeting. That's how overindulgence quietly strips a man of his power. Not by breaking him, but by softening him. Real strength, real energy, comes from the ability to hold tension, to delay gratification, to say no, to face the craving without surrendering to it. That moment of resistance is not weakness, it's training. Every time you resist a small indulgence, you teach your brain to produce dopamine through discipline rather than dependence. Over time, that rewiring restores energy, clarity, and motivation. The reward becomes deeper and more sustainable. Think about it like a financial metaphor. Every indulgence is a withdrawal. Every act of restraint is a deposit. If you're constantly taking out without putting in, without giving your brain rest, stillness, or purpose, the account runs dry. You start to live in a state of dopamine debt, chasing new highs to cover the low. But if you learn to save, to invest in effort, meaning, and mindful pleasure, the balance returns. Your energy begins to grow again, not from stimulation, but from stability. This doesn't mean you have to deny yourself joy. It means you must redefine it. Pleasure that costs you. Your future energy is not pleasure. It's consumption. Pleasure that builds your future, that comes from learning, movement, connection, service. That's the kind that sustains vitality. The paradox is that when you stop chasing instant pleasure, your capacity for real pleasure expands. The coffee tastes better, the walk feels richer, the laughter lasts longer, your brain resets and life feels new again. So the next time you reach for something that promises a quick high, pause. Ask yourself, am I making a deposit or a withdrawal? That small question creates awareness, and awareness is the beginning of mastery because your energy is not just physical, it's psychological, chemical, spiritual. When you protect your dopamine balance, you protect the very source of your vitality. Overindulgence is not just a habit, it's a slow erosion of your will. But recovery isn't complicated. It starts with one conscious act of resistance, one moment of stillness, one choice to seek meaning over stimulation. Do that consistently, and you'll find that the same system that once enslaved you will start to serve you again. The brain is remarkably forgiving. Even after 60, it can heal, rewire, and reignite. All it asks of you is balance, not perfection, but awareness. And when that balance returns, you'll rediscover something you may have forgotten. That true pleasure isn't loud or fleeting. It's quiet, earned, and powerful enough to sustain a lifetime. Discomfort isn't your enemy, it's your untapped medicine. We live in an age that treats pain like a malfunction, something to be numbed, avoided, or medicated away, but the human brain was built to grow through challenge. The same neural circuits that help you feel pleasure also help you process pain. They exist in balance. Two sides of a seesaw. When you press too hard on the side of pleasure, the brain automatically tilts toward pain to restore equilibrium. That's why too much comfort leaves us anxious, restless, and drained. We've broken the balance, and the cure isn't more ease. It's rediscovering the strength to sit in discomfort without running from it. Most men after 60 have fought many battles. They've worked, built, sacrificed, and endured. Yet as the years pass, comfort starts to disguise itself as peace. The body wants rest, the mind craves quiet, and before long, the days become a series of gentle routines designed to keep any friction away. But here's the paradox. The less discomfort you face, the weaker your capacity for joy becomes. The brain's reward system depends on contrast. Without struggle, pleasure loses its spark. What once felt satisfying now feels dull. That morning coffee doesn't energize you like it used to. That evening walk feels empty. The problem isn't age, it's adaptation. The brain has stopped working for reward because it's no longer challenged to earn it. We've all been trained by modern life to believe that happiness means comfort. If something hurts, we label it as wrong. If we're bored, we distract ourselves. If we're lonely, we scroll. But pain and discomfort are not flaws in the system. They're signals, essential parts of how the brain resets. Every time you sit through discomfort without escaping it, you strengthen your emotional endurance. The dopamine system recalibrates. That's why people feel alive after exercise, fasting, deep reflection, or meaningful struggle. Pain followed by recovery is the brain's oldest medicine. Think about how muscle grows. You stress it, it tears, it rebuilds stronger. The same applies to your mind. Psychological and physical resilience are born from friction. When you stop facing challenge, you start to decay from the inside out. A man who avoids discomfort may not feel pain, but he also won't feel power. His life becomes a smooth, flat line. No sharp edges, no deep valleys, but also no peaks. He confuses safety with satisfaction. Discomfort, in healthy doses, reignites the circuitry of vitality. When you take a cold shower, push through a workout, speak an uncomfortable truth, or face silence without distraction, your brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals that sharpen awareness and restore balance. Pain and effort activate the body's natural opioids and endorphins, molecules that bring calm and clarity, not chaos. After discomfort comes a longer lasting, deeper form of pleasure, the satisfaction that comes from earning it. There's a powerful beauty in controlled discomfort. It reminds the brain that you're still alive, still capable, still adaptable. When you deliberately lean into small challenges, you teach your nervous system that pain doesn't mean danger, it means growth. Over time, the same discomfort that once frightened you becomes a source of confidence. You start to trust yourself again. You realize that you don't need constant ease to feel okay. You can face what's hard and remain steady. That's real freedom. Think of the moments in your life that shaped you the most. They probably weren't the easy ones. They were the times when you were uncomfortable, uncertain, maybe even afraid. Yet those were the seasons that built your character, your patience, your empathy. Discomfort stripped away illusions and forced you to discover what you were really made of. Now, in the later years of life, the same principle still applies. Avoiding discomfort doesn't protect you, it limits you. It numbs the very circuits that give life meaning. When a man learns to welcome discomfort, he takes back control of his dopamine system. He stops needing constant stimulation because he's no longer afraid of the quiet. He doesn't need a screen to fill the silence or a habit to ease the edge. He learns that boredom, restlessness, even loneliness are temporary states, signals from the brain saying it's time to grow. If he ignores them, he stays stagnant. If he listens, he transforms. The path to vitality after 60 isn't about adding more pleasure. It's about rebalancing the pleasure-pain equation. When you sit with discomfort, your brain naturally raises dopamine sensitivity. That means small joys feel joyful again. The taste of food, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, these simple things regain power because the brain has been recalibrated. The numbness fades and the spark returns. In a world that sells comfort as the cure for everything, choosing discomfort is an act of rebellion. It's a declaration that you're not done growing. It means you're still willing to challenge your brain, to feel, to risk, to adapt. Discomfort keeps the spirit young. It sharpens the mind and strengthens the body. It reawakens the primal rhythm between effort and reward that makes life meaningful. You don't need to seek pain for the sake of suffering. You only need to stop running from it. Allow small discomforts into your day. Wake up earlier, move your body, sit in silence for a few minutes without reaching for your phone, have the difficult conversation you've been avoiding, choose the stairs instead of the elevator. Each of these choices is a small signal to your brain that you're alive, engaged, and in control. The medicine of discomfort is subtle but powerful. It doesn't act like a stimulant. It heals like a tonic. It doesn't give you an instant rush. It restores long-term balance. When you begin to accept discomfort as a teacher rather than an enemy, you unlock a deeper form of strength. You stop fearing pain and you start using it. So, the next time life feels too quiet, too easy, too predictable, ask yourself, where can I invite a little friction back in? Where can I choose challenge over comfort? Because every drop of discomfort you willingly endure doesn't deplete you, it builds you. It reawakens the brain's natural resilience, the same resilience that made you strong decades ago. That's not just surviving age, that's mastering it. Numbness is not peace, it's dopamine fatigue. There's a quiet epidemic among men today, especially those past 60. They wake up in the morning, go through the motions, and tell themselves they're calm. They say they're content, that they've learned to slow down, that they've made peace with life's pace. But if you look a little closer, beneath that calm is a subtle emptiness, a loss of spark, a sense that everything is dulled around the edges. That's not peace. That's the brain running on low dopamine, the chemical fuel that gives life color, meaning, and drive. When dopamine is balanced, the world feels alive. You look at the sunrise and feel awe. You start a project and feel excitement. You speak to someone and feel connection. But when dopamine becomes depleted, even the most beautiful moments lose their light. Food tastes bland, time drags, motivation disappears. You stop wanting to explore, to build, to reach. You confuse the absence of chaos with the presence of peace. But peace is not the same as emptiness. One is full of awareness, the other is hollow. This state of emotional flatness happens slowly, quietly. It doesn't announce itself with pain. It creeps in through overstimulation. Every time you chase quick pleasure through scrolling, overeating, overdrinking, or repetitive habits, your brain releases dopamine in short, powerful bursts. And like any system that's overused, it begins to tire. The brain compensates by reducing dopamine sensitivity, making it harder to feel pleasure from normal life. What used to make you happy now barely registers. You start to feel detached, disconnected, indifferent. That's dopamine fatigue. Not depression, not serenity, but the exhaustion of a reward system that's been burned out by too many small highs. The tragedy is that our culture celebrates this numbness. It calls it relaxation, retirement, or contentment. But real contentment isn't about detachment from life. It's about engagement without addiction. The man who feels truly at peace is still curious, still capable of joy, still present in the world. Dopamine fatigue steals that from you. It replaces vibrant living with quiet survival. You go through the day not because you're inspired to, but because it's what's expected. You've stopped seeking because your brain has stopped rewarding the effort to seek. The good news, and it's profound, is that dopamine fatigue isn't permanent. The brain is remarkably resilient. It can heal, but it needs rest, honesty, and deliberate change. Healing begins when you stop mistaking numbness for peace. When you recognize that what feels like calm might actually be withdrawal from years of overstimulation. Just like a person who stops drinking coffee feels sluggish for a few days before their natural energy returns, your brain needs time to reset its dopamine balance. And during that reset, life feels flat. That flatness isn't failure. It's the first step toward healing. If you can sit in that emptiness without trying to fill it, something beautiful happens. Slowly, the brain begins to upregulate dopamine receptors again. You start to notice the small things, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of birds, the satisfaction of a task done well. These experiences begin to release dopamine naturally again, but now in balance, not in bursts. It's like color returning to a faded photograph. Life becomes textured, rich, quietly powerful. For men who've lived through decades of noise, work, and pressure, numbness can feel like a relief at first. But deep down, they know it's not peace. It's escape. Peace feels light. Numbness feels heavy, peace expands you, numbness contracts you, peace invites you into life, numbness shuts you out from it. The real path back to vitality is not avoiding stimulation altogether, but choosing the right kind, the kind that's earned, not consumed. Start small, move your body every day, even when you don't feel like it. Physical movement is one of the most natural ways to reawaken dopamine. Challenge your brain, read, learn, engage in new experiences, connect with people deeply and without distraction. Spend time in silence, not as a punishment, but as a reset. The brain needs stillness to repair, but it also needs challenge to grow. Balance both, and you'll feel the difference within weeks. One of the hardest truths about dopamine is that the more you chase it, the less of it you feel. But when you stop chasing, when you give your mind time to recover, the brain remembers how to produce it naturally again. It's like tending a fire. Constant poking and overfeeding puts it out, but patience and balance keep it glowing. That glow is what most men mistake as gone forever. But it's not gone, it's buried under the fatigue of overstimulation. The return of vitality doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing less, but with intention. It's found in small acts done consciously, making coffee without rushing, breathing deeply before you speak, finishing a task without distraction. These moments might feel ordinary, but they're medicine. They rebuild dopamine balance one quiet moment at a time. When numbness starts to fade, peace finally feels real. You no longer need constant input to feel alive. You wake up with energy that comes from within, not from a screen or a substance. You feel connected to the present moment, not lost in a loop of craving. That's not dopamine fatigue anymore, that's dopamine mastery. So, if you find yourself drifting through the days, convinced that you're just mellow or content, look closer. Ask yourself when you last felt genuine excitement, curiosity, or awe. If it's been a while, you're not broken. You're tired. Your brain is asking for rest and reset, not stimulation. Give it that space. Replace instant highs with earned satisfaction. Let silence teach you patience again, and you'll discover something profound. Peace isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of balance. Once your dopamine finds its rhythm again, you'll realize life never lost its meaning. Your brain just lost its sensitivity to it. The color, the warmth, the joy, it's all still there, waiting behind the fog. You don't need to chase it. You just need to heal enough to feel it again. That's when numbness ends and true peace begins. Self-control is not deprivation, it's freedom in disguise for most people, especially in today's world. Self-control sounds like loss. It sounds like saying no to pleasure, cutting yourself off from joy, denying yourself what makes life feel good. But that's an illusion created by a culture addicted to comfort. Real self-control doesn't imprison you, it liberates you, it gives you back your mind, your focus, your vitality, the things that constant indulgence quietly steals. When you reclaim control over your impulses, you stop being a passenger in your own life. You stop being ruled by cravings that never end. You begin to experience a deeper kind of pleasure, one that isn't fleeting or dependent on the next hit of dopamine, but grounded, calm, and enduring. The paradox is that modern society tells us freedom means doing whatever we want, whenever we want. But that's not freedom, that's slavery to desire. Each time you act on impulse, you reinforce a neural loop that says, I can't be still without stimulation. The brain learns to crave the next fix, the next distraction, the next little escape from discomfort. Over time, you become restless without even knowing why. Your mood depends on external triggers. You eat when you're not hungry, scroll when you're not curious, and seek validation when you already know your worth. You become a servant to your own dopamine system, a system that was designed to serve you. Real freedom begins the moment you can sit with an urge and choose not to obey it. That simple act, waiting, observing, allowing the craving to rise and fall without acting, rewires your brain. Each time you resist, you strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for discipline, decision-making, and purpose. You build a bridge between impulse and intention. The craving loses its power, and your confidence grows. What once controlled you now becomes your teacher. The discomfort you feel isn't a punishment. It's your brain recalibrating, learning that it doesn't need constant pleasure to survive. Imagine the man who has spent decades responding to every small desire: food, entertainment, attention, comfort. He's lived well, but he's also lived under the subtle tyranny of his own appetites. Now, at 60 or 70, he begins to feel tired, unmotivated, unfulfilled. He thinks it's age, but it's not. It's exhaustion from years of overindulgence and underdiscipline. His dopamine receptors have been overworked. His mind has forgotten the sweetness of restraint. But when he begins to practice self-control again, when he fasts a little, walks instead of scrolling, chooses silence over noise, something extraordinary happens. The fog begins to lift. His energy returns, not because he's found a new pleasure, but because he's freed himself from the old ones. Self-control doesn't take away pleasure. It restores your ability to feel it. When everything is available all the time, pleasure loses its meaning. The first sip of water after thirst, the first bite after hunger, the first quiet breath after a long day. These moments are deeply satisfying only because they are earned. Discipline reintroduces contrast. It brings back the intensity of simple joys. The man who learns to delay gratification doesn't live with less, he lives with more awareness, more sensitivity, more appreciation for what truly matters. Every act of restraint builds integrity. It's a declaration to yourself, I am stronger than my urges. That statement, repeated through action, rebuilds trust between your conscious mind and your instincts. You no longer need to hide from temptation or rely on willpower alone because you've trained your brain to understand that you're in charge. This is how confidence is built, not by domination, but by consistency. Each small victory compounds into strength. You begin to move through the world with quiet power. People can feel it. You feel it. That's the kind of freedom no external pleasure can offer. The truth is, there's no such thing as total freedom without self-control. The person who can't say no is never truly free. He's chained to whatever tempts him most. But the person who can delay, redirect, or choose differently, he experiences life with sovereignty. He decides when to engage and when to rest, when to indulge and when to refrain. That balance is not deprivation, it's mastery. It's the foundation of peace, purpose, and power. This doesn't mean living like a monk or denying every joy. It means becoming conscious. Noticing when pleasure serves you and when it owns you. It means choosing what to feed and what to starve. Every habit, every craving, every moment of impulse is a negotiation between your higher self and your lower self. Self-control ensures the higher one wins more often. That's not about suppression. It's about alignment. You start to act from values, not from urges, from clarity, not from compulsion. When you begin practicing this form of control, the first thing you'll notice is resistance. The brain will rebel. It will whisper that you're missing out, that you deserve comfort, that it's too hard. That voice is not truth, it's conditioning. Stay with it. Watch it lose volume with time. Within weeks, the cravings weaken. Within months, you start to feel steady. And eventually, what used to tempt you loses its pull entirely. That's the moment of real victory. Not because you forced yourself, but because you evolved. Self-control is the bridge between chaos and clarity. It's what turns knowledge into transformation. Without it, you drift. With it, you direct. The men who master this balance, who learn that saying no to small things allows them to say yes to bigger ones, become unshakable. They stop searching for freedom outside themselves because they've found it within. So, the next time you feel that tug to give in, to escape, to indulge, pause. Not to punish yourself, but to observe. Remember that in that small moment of hesitation lies your entire power. You are not depriving yourself. You are strengthening your connection to your own will. That's what it means to be free. To choose your actions consciously, not compulsively. True self-control isn't about restriction, it's about reclamation. It's not about living with less, it's about living with intention. And that intention, that steady, grounded awareness, is the purest form of freedom a human being can know. Your brain can heal, but only if you stop medicating your boredom. In a world that worships stimulation, boredom has become the enemy. We reach for our phones the moment silence appears. We fill every pause with noise, every stillness with distraction. Yet, what we call boredom is not a void to fear, it's a signal. It's the brain's way of telling us that our dopamine system, the very circuitry that regulates motivation, pleasure, and focus, needs a reset. The tragedy is that instead of listening, we medicate it. We drown it with constant entertainment, sugar, scrolling, or comfort. And with every quick fix, we rob the brain of its chance to heal. The dopamine system is beautifully simple, yet profoundly delicate. It thrives on balance. Peaks of pleasure, followed by valleys of rest, but when we overload it with easy rewards, it never gets the chance to return to baseline. Imagine an instrument constantly played without pause. The strings eventually fray, the tone dulls, the music loses life. That's what happens to the brain after years of overindulgence. We stop feeling deep joy and start craving shallow stimulation. The smallest discomfort feels unbearable because we've trained ourselves to flee from stillness, and the more we run from boredom, the more it chases us. Healing begins when we stop trying to escape, when you allow yourself to feel boredom without reaching for something to fill it. Your brain begins to recalibrate. It's like letting a wound breathe after years of being covered. The process is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel restless, agitated, maybe even empty. That's withdrawal. The brain learning that it no longer needs a constant supply of dopamine to survive. But beneath that discomfort lies renewal. The circuits that have been dulled by overstimulation slowly begin to wake up. Your natural motivation returns. Ordinary things start to feel interesting again. The smell of rain, a conversation, a simple task done with care. This is not a coincidence, it's biology repairing itself. Most people never reach this stage because they misinterpret boredom as a problem to solve rather than a teacher to learn from. They think they need to fill it with productivity or pleasure. But boredom, when embraced, is fertile ground for creativity, insight, and emotional strength. It's the mind's way of clearing space for new ideas to emerge. When you stop medicating boredom, your thoughts begin to wander, and that wandering is where imagination lives. Many great ideas, breakthroughs, and moments of peace are born in those quiet spaces, not during distraction, but during stillness. For men over 60, this becomes even more crucial. The natural decline in dopamine sensitivity that comes with age makes the brain more vulnerable to overstimulation. What once felt satisfying now feels dull, leading to the instinct to seek more media, more snacks, more background noise. But this chase doesn't reignite vitality, it drains it further. The path back to energy and purpose lies not in adding stimulation, but in subtracting it. When you choose stillness, even for short periods, you're allowing your nervous system to breathe. The dopamine receptors start to regain sensitivity. You begin to experience pleasure more deeply, not more often. It takes courage to face boredom because in that silence, everything you've been avoiding starts to surface. Regret, loneliness, unprocessed emotion. But that's the point. Healing happens not by suppressing pain, but by allowing it to move through you. The moment you stop drowning out your inner voice, it begins to speak again. You reconnect with what matters, not with artificial highs, but with real meaning. You rediscover curiosity, the kind that doesn't depend on a screen or a thrill. That's where your vitality lives. In the quiet spaces you've been running from, there's a profound irony here. The very thing we avoid, boredom, is the doorway to joy. The more you resist the urge to fill every gap, the more space you create for genuine pleasure. Your brain learns to find reward in effort again, in cooking a meal, fixing something, reading slowly, walking with no destination. These are not dopamine spikes, they're dopamine rhythms. They restore balance. They give your brain the rhythm it's been missing. Effort and reward, rest and renewal. Think of it as detox. Just like the body needs a break from toxins, the mind needs a break from overstimulation. Every time you choose to sit quietly instead of checking your phone, you're practicing mental fasting. At first, it feels uncomfortable, the same way hunger does when you start physical fasting. But then something beautiful happens. The mind clears, thoughts sharpen, emotions stabilize. You feel more alive, not less. The healing was never in doing more, it was in allowing less. This is not about rejecting pleasure. It's about reclaiming it. When you stop medicating boredom, pleasure becomes precious. Again, the taste of food returns. Music feels richer. Connection feels real. Life slows down just enough for you to experience it fully. That's not dullness, that's depth. You begin to live from the inside out, rather than being dragged by the endless current of external stimulation. The next time boredom creeps in, don't rush to silence it. Sit with it. Watch how your mind panics, how it searches for something to grasp. Let it observe the craving without acting on it. This is your brain detoxing from the overstimulation of years. With each moment you resist medicating boredom, you build endurance, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual. You become grounded, you become present. You rediscover that the most powerful experiences in life often arrive through stillness, not through constant motion. In the end, healing isn't about finding the next high. It's about returning to balance. The brain was never meant to be entertained all the time. It was meant to feel contrast, effort and ease, noise and silence, excitement and calm. When you stop medicating your boredom, you stop numbing your potential. The quiet that once felt unbearable becomes sacred. It's in that quiet that your vitality returns, not because you chased it, but because you finally gave your brain permission to rest, reset, and remember what it means to feel alive. Vitality after 60 isn't found in pleasure, it's found in purpose. The great misunderstanding of our modern age is that pleasure equals happiness, that the more we feed our desires, the more alive we'll feel. But as we age, something profound happens. The quick highs that once lit us up begin to fade. The taste of indulgence dulls. The thrills that once gave us energy start to drain us. Instead, and this is not a loss, it's an invitation. It's your brain, your body, and your spirit whispering, you were made for more than pleasure. Because pleasure without purpose is noise. Purpose turns that noise into music. When you're young, dopamine pushes you toward novelty, toward discovery, toward risk. It's nature's way of making sure you explore and expand. But in later life, the role of dopamine changes. It no longer thrives on excess. It thrives on meaning. Your brain doesn't need more stimulation. It needs direction. Pleasure feels empty without a target, without something to serve. That's why so many men after 60 feel restless or lost even when surrounded by comfort, because they've been chasing excitement when what they're really craving is significance. The irony is that the deepest, most sustainable pleasure comes not from self-indulgence, but from contribution. When your efforts touch something beyond yourself, when your energy feeds others, builds, creates, mentors, or uplifts, the brain releases a more grounded kind of reward, not the sharp fleeting spike of dopamine from a thrill, but the steady warmth of serotonin and oxytocin, the chemistry of connection, meaning, and peace. These are the neurotransmitters of legacy. They don't burn fast, they endure. Men often mistake slowing down for decline, but sometimes it's evolution. The body may change, but the capacity for purpose expands. You've gathered wisdom, perspective, resilience, the raw materials of influence. Vitality after 60 isn't about running faster or chasing harder. It's about aligning your energy with something that matters. It might be guiding younger generations, creating something lasting, or simply becoming a living example of integrity in a distracted world. When you find that why, your brain wakes up again. Your energy returns not from adrenaline, but from alignment. There's a biological truth here. Dopamine, when linked to long-term goals and service, creates a more sustainable reward circuit. It stops spiking and starts stabilizing. That's why people who live with purpose, even in old age, often look younger, move stronger, and think clearer. Their motivation isn't external, it's intrinsic. They're not chasing pleasure, they're embodying it through meaning. Each morning brings something to contribute to, not something to consume. That shift alone transforms physiology. It turns aging into awakening. Pleasure, by itself, always ends in emptiness because it's designed to fade. It's a burst meant to guide behavior, not to sustain life. Purpose, however, compounds over time. Every act of meaning you engage in, no matter how small, builds momentum. It builds identity. It rewires the brain to find satisfaction not in indulgence, but in intention. You start to feel a quiet pride, a deep peace that no amount of entertainment or comfort can replace. The pleasure that comes from purpose is deeper, slower, and infinitely more fulfilling. Men who reach 60% often find themselves at a crossroads. They've spent decades providing, striving, achieving. But when the external rewards lose their shine and existential fatigue sets in, this is the moment to pivot from performance to presence, from success to significance. It's the time to ask, what do I still have to give? Because vitality isn't a product of what you take in, it's the byproduct of what you give out. The energy you share with others through mentorship, kindness, curiosity, or creativity doesn't deplete you, it multiplies. In a world obsessed with consumption, this truth sounds counterintuitive. The more you give, the more alive you feel. The science supports it. Altruism activates the brain's reward centers even more powerfully than self-indulgence. Acts of service elevate dopamine and serotonin in balanced waves, the kind that sustain mood and motivation without burnout. That's the chemistry of purpose. Steady, stable, nourishing. It's why men who engage with meaning often report feeling more alive at 70 than they did at 40. This isn't about rejecting pleasure altogether. It's about putting it back in its rightful place as a companion to purpose, not a replacement for it. Pleasure gives flavor to life, but purpose gives it form. Without form, flavor fades quickly. With form, every taste becomes richer, more satisfying. You stop needing constant novelty because meaning turns repetition into ritual. The morning walk becomes meditation. The daily routine becomes service. The ordinary becomes sacred. There's also a psychological transformation that happens when purpose replaces pleasure as your compass. The ego softens. You stop seeking validation because your value no longer depends on performance or status. You find joy in being rather than becoming. The restlessness that once drove you now settles into gratitude. You start to live with intention, not urgency. This is not withdrawal from life. It's deeper participation in it. The noise quiets, but the music grows richer. When men learn this, they stop fearing age. They stop chasing youth as if it were the only season worth living. They realize that real vitality doesn't come from the body. It comes from the spirit. And the spirit doesn't age. It evolves. Purpose is the fuel that keeps it burning. Every day you wake up with something meaningful to do, to learn, to give, to create. Your brain releases the chemistry of aliveness. It's not about how long you live. It's about how awake you are while you're alive. The truth is simple, but radical. Pleasure is the spark, but purpose is the fire. The spark fades, the fire sustains. At 60, 70, even 80, you have a choice. You can keep chasing temporary highs, or you can build something that outlasts you. The former drains your energy, the latter expands it. One burns quickly, the other burns clean. The man who chooses purpose doesn't fear time. He partners with it. Every day becomes an opportunity to live fully, not through stimulation, but through significance. So if you want to feel alive again, stop asking, what can I take from life? And start asking, what can I give to it? Because in that question lies the secret of vitality. Pleasure gives you moments. Purpose gives you momentum. And in that steady rhythm of giving, growing, and meaning, you rediscover what it truly means to be alive. There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes that the game he's been playing no longer satisfies him. The wins feel smaller. The highs fade faster. The noise of constant stimulation, once intoxicating, starts to feel like static. And in that quiet moment, somewhere between exhaustion and awareness, something whispers from within. There must be more than this. That whisper is not weakness. It's not decline. It's the signal of awakening. The call to shift from chasing dopamine to cultivating depth. For decades, the world taught you that pleasure was the point, that success, stimulation, indulgence, comfort, and consumption were the proof of a life well lived. But neuroscience, experience, and wisdom all tell a different story. Every time you overindulge, you drain your future energy. Every time you avoid discomfort, you numb your natural strength. Every time you fill silence with distraction, you rob yourself of the chance to hear what your soul has been trying to say all along. The real tragedy is not aging. The real tragedy is never waking up to how alive you could have been. The truth is, the dopamine system was never your enemy. It was your compass. It was meant to point you toward growth, connection, and creation. But somewhere along the way, it got hijacked by modern life, by endless scrolling, instant gratification, sugar, stimulation, and noise. You started living for the next hit, not the next horizon. And in that chase, you lost the rhythm that makes life feel rich. Effort and reward, struggle and satisfaction, rest and renewal. Healing begins the moment you stop running from that rhythm and learn to move with it again, because discomfort is not punishment. It's your brain's gym. It's where resilience grows, where balance restores itself. Each time you lean into a little pain, a cold shower, a long walk, a quiet hour without distraction, you rebuild the neural pathways that once made you strong. You remember that freedom doesn't come from feeding every impulse, it comes from mastering them. Discipline is not the opposite of pleasure. It's the foundation of it. Only through control do we rediscover real joy, the kind that isn't fleeting, the kind that fuels rather than drains. And yes, your brain can heal. It's not too late. No matter how overstimulated, fatigued, or dulled you feel, your dopamine system can reset, but it won't happen by doing more. It happens by doing less, by sitting in silence, by allowing boredom, by watching cravings rise and pass without acting. The stillness you avoid is the medicine you need. In that stillness, your neurons start to repair, your mind begins to clear, and your natural motivation, not the artificial kind, returns. What once felt meaningless starts to feel vibrant again. The world comes back into color. But this awakening is not just about brain chemistry. It's about meaning, because in the end, vitality isn't about pleasure. It's about purpose. When you anchor your actions in something that matters, when you serve, create, mentor, or love with intention, your brain begins to produce a different kind of energy. It's not a spike. It's a steady flame, the kind of energy that doesn't fade after a rush, but grows with every active contribution. Purpose turns aging into evolution. It turns fatigue into focus. It gives you a reason to rise each morning, not to consume, but to contribute. See, dopamine isn't bad. It just needs direction. Pleasure isn't the enemy. It just needs meaning. The goal was never to kill desire, but to guide it, to channel that fire into something that outlasts the moment. Because at the end of life, it won't be the pleasures you chase that give you peace. It will be the purpose you served, the self-control you mastered, and the people you uplifted along the way. So as you step into this next chapter, this wiser, deeper season of life, remember this, you are not past your prime. You are entering the age of refinement, the age when dopamine becomes devotion, when noise gives way to clarity, when comfort transforms into courage. You've lived long enough to know that the quick path burns fast and the meaningful one burns bright. You don't need to feel 20 again. You need to feel alive again. And aliveness doesn't come from stimulation. It comes from alignment, from living in sync with what truly matters, from letting go of what drains you and holding fast to what expands you. Your brain can heal. Your energy can return. Your spirit can rise. All it asks is that you stop medicating your discomfort and start listening to it, that you stop numbing your boredom and start learning from it, that you stop chasing pleasure and start building purpose. Because the truth, the deep biological and spiritual truth, is this: when you master your dopamine, you master your life. And when you master your life, no age can take your vitality. The fire doesn't go out, it just burns cleaner, brighter, and truer than ever before.